Hey guys, welcome back to the channel with me, Lyle. In today's video, we are going to be talking about emergency funds, what it is, what it's not, and also why it's never been more important to have an emergency fund. I'll also be talking about why I feel that $1,000 or 10,000 Rand just isn't enough. Might have been a couple of years ago, but the day and age in which we find ourselves, I don't think it's enough. So, first of all, what is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is a place where you set aside funds for the unexpected. And these could be things like hospital bills or something breaking that you never planned to break. But a few years ago, I found myself in a position where it's like, I'm not going to set aside funds for a rainy day or an emergency because I'm a man of God and God will protect me. Guys, God protects me, He keeps me safe, but I still live in this earth where the washing machine could break, where the fence could go down. And while I mention those two, I'll share an example, two examples real quick. A couple of years ago, at our first house that we lived at, there was a storm that came through, and I'm from South Africa, I'm not used to these storms, but the wind was blowing and the trees were blowing, and I was like, we got to get into the shelter, or we got to go into the closet. And Brittany, my wife, my beautiful wife, she was like, it's going to be fine. Well, we were fine. However, our fence fell over. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the spade or shovel and I'm going to dig it out and get a piece of wood and I'm going to repair this fence. And a couple of hours later of trying to get this post out of the ground, I just couldn't do it. We didn't have any money set aside for this because we didn't expect this to happen. But what ended up happening is with our neighbor, we contacted somebody to come in to fix it. We didn't have any cash set aside for this, so we needed to either use a credit card or some form of credit to be able to pay this guy. And how does it affect us in a negative way? Interest. Because we were not able to pay back the credit card company the full amount, we paid interest, so we paid more. Whereas if we had cash, we could probably have gotten a better rate from the guy and we wouldn't have had to incur any interest. Second example, a couple of years later, we had our washing machine stop working. It just wouldn't work properly. And we had money set aside, so I could have spent hours online trying to Google and trying to figure out how to fix the washing machine making the sound or not blowing enough air. But I would have been wasting my time that I could have been spending with my family, and I could have attempted to fix the washing machine, and who knows if I would have gotten it right. But because we had money set aside, we could go out and we could actually go and repair the washing machine. Okay, common arguments. Just like with myself, it's a lack of faith, or I don't have enough money to be able to set aside on a monthly basis because we're just about breaking even now already. In fact, guys, how's the best way to say this? Failing to plan for the unexpected is actually going to put yourself in a worse of position. So even if it means cutting some costs when it comes to eating out or reducing your subscriptions with regards to stuff that you watch online, will actually allow you to free up funds which you can be setting aside, that when the unexpected happens, you can actually go and cover that without having to worry. When the washing machine, which is in the room somewhere at the back over there, when that broke, we didn't fret, we didn't panic like, oh my gosh, how are we going to fix this thing? We knew that we had the money, and you can be in that position too. I also want to point out in another video that I had recorded that's on this channel about how to budget, I mentioned sinking funds, and this is setting aside funds for expected expenditure that doesn't take place on a regular basis, like the car registration. So you're not going to use your emergency funds for things like that because you expect those costs to be incurred. Okay, so I just want to point that out. Know what an emergency is. It's something that's unexpected that you never planned on. And you need to have cash available to cover those costs, because if you don't, it's going to affect your ability to conduct your day-to-day living. An example might be, let's say something happens to your car. Unless you've got the resources to fix the car, you can't get to your job. On the other hand, a sale at the Nike store is not an emergency. So you're not going to spend your resources on that. So how much should you set aside? Some people say $1,000, 10,000 Rand. The day and age in which we live nowadays, guys, most unexpected costs tend to be more than that, which means if you just have that amount, well, those are good amounts to be aiming for. I do believe that you're still going to find yourself in a position where you're probably going to have to use credit to cover costs that's above that. So while I do think those are good goals to start off with, I think we shouldn't stop there. If you can get yourself into a position where you can set aside more than that, it's even better. So how do you determine how much we should be setting aside? You need to identify what your bare necessities are. So how much do you need to be setting aside, or how much do you spend rather on your mortgage if you've got a mortgage payment, your transportation, your food, your utilities. Identify that amount. So were you to lose your job tomorrow, which by God's grace, we're not going to lose our jobs tomorrow. Although during the COVID times, lots of people actually lost their jobs. And God is restoring what the enemy has taken. So we're trusting God. If you find yourself in a position where you have lost your job, that God's going to restore, and God's going to get you an even bigger and better job, better paying job, so that you can do more and enjoy life. Okay, so yeah, I just thought I should share that too. Don't give up hope. But back to the example. So you've identified what your basic costs are that you need to cover. You then need to identify how many months worth of, or how long will it take for you if you were to lose your job today to actually get another job. If it takes 3 months on average to find a new job, then I would say maybe let's aim for 3 months worth of emergency fund. So take the amount that your bare necessities are, like your mortgage, your transportation costs, your fuel, maybe your car payment, your utilities, and so on, and then multiply by 3. And that will give you an amount that you're going to be aiming to having as your fully funded emergency fund, as they call it. So you've got that amount over here. So how quickly do we fund it? How quickly do we get to that amount? Let's say, as an example, this is not our true numbers, but let's say our bare necessities, or like those core expenditures in our household, let's say it's $2,000. And let's say for a person like myself, in the field that I'm in, it will take 3 months to actually be in a position where I'll be able to get a new job. Just again, as an example. So 3 months times the 2,000, that's $6,000. So that's what we should be aiming for. But how quickly we fund that is going to be based on prayer, ask the Lord, and then also just depends on if it's a goal for you to get that funded quickly, because when you've got that fully funded emergency fund, there's just a lot of pressure that's lifted off of you in terms of if something were to happen. I read so many statistics or articles online with these statistics where I think it's more than 40% of people can't afford to pay a bill of $400 more in the USA. In South Africa, it's similar, but not with dollars, but rands at 10,000. Most people can't afford. I think I read a stat where it's more than 50% of people can't afford a 10,000 Rand unexpected bill. So let's not be that people. Let's be people that are doing our part in setting aside funds for that. But how quickly we fund this emergency fund is up to you. If I want to fund it in 3 months, I'm going to set aside 2,000 divided by 3. If I want to fund it in 1 month, I'm going to just take $2,000 and put it over there and act as if that money doesn't exist, because that's money that is set aside purely for an emergency. Make sense to you guys? So that's how we're going to go, and that's how we're going to flow when it comes to this. We are going to identify the amount, set it aside, and then we're going to fund it. But where do you keep it? Do I keep the money under my bed or in my safe? No. Because what happens if something happens at the house and the money's gone? Am I going to put it into my checking account? No. Because if it's in my checking account, I'm going to be tempted personally. You might be different, but I'm going to be tempted to spend that money. Oh, I've got an extra 2,000 in my bank account. Oh, there's a new computer for sale. I'm going to spend it. Or, oh, there's this party. Oh, yeah, let's go. Let's go to dinner with friends and spend X amount of money on dinner that night. But if it's not in the checking account, the temptation is taken away. So where should you set your emergency funds aside. At a minimum, in a high yielding interest savings account, right? So find a savings account, whether if it's an online account that gives you a decent interest rate that's above inflation, or depending where you find yourself, you might not be able to get a savings account that offers that, but try and get the best savings account in terms of interest, but also reliability, making sure that your funds are secure. I'm going to have another video on how to choose a savings account at a later date, and I'll have a link to that video for you. But just make sure that you're setting it aside in a place where you're not tempted to spend it immediately. What you could also do is, if you feel that an interest savings account, that's the word I was looking for, is not the best, and maybe take a portion and put it into a money market fund. But just bear in mind with that, if you put it into a money market fund, that you might not have immediate access to the money. And the aim with an emergency fund, as I mentioned at the start of this video, it's more of an insurance for those sort of expenditure. If you're going to lock it up in a money market fund and you can't access it immediately, how are you going to cover that emergency? Yes, some people I know will use a credit card temporarily and then pay that payment. That might work for you, but I want to be in a position where if I need the money tomorrow, I can get it tomorrow. I know of some people saying we should put our money into stocks or or invest a portion. But again, the same thing, guys. If you're going to take your emergency fund and you're going to put it into the stock market, what happens when that emergency takes place? If you're going to have to pull it out of the stock market, you're going to have to sell stock. There's going to be fees that you're going to incur. So you might be losing money. So for me personally, and this is not financial advice by any means, this is just what I would do personally for myself. I'd use a high yielding interest savings account, and then maybe a portion in a money market account where I can access it, knowing that there's going to be a penalty if I need to withdraw the money before the time frame that I'm actually committed to leaving it into this money market fund. Okay, so just at a really high level, it's important. Don't be the guy whose fence fell over and had to spend hours only to make no progress, but be the guy or girl who's got the money set aside. When the washing machine broke, all I needed to do was go online, order a new washing machine, and pay for it. And then the final thing is, once I used the money for the washing machine, I needed to replenish the emergency fund again, or we needed to, because it's Brittany's as well. The two are one. So be sure to replenish it, and then we needed to make sure that money was set aside to cover future unexpected expenses. Guys, if this video was a blessing to you, if this helped you by any means, and you haven't subscribed, click subscribe below. Share this video with friends and family that you feel can benefit from this. And again, having an emergency fund is not a sign of a lack of faith. There's so many principles in God's word where He talks about setting aside funds and resources. So I want to remind you that God is a good God. He's got a good plan for your life. Plan for the future. And just remember that you might feel hopeless today, but by just making small changes to your personal finances will set you up and change the trajectory of your life, but not only your life, but the generations to come. It will get you closer to the place that God has called you to be. So God bless you guys, and I look forward to catching up with you guys soon.